Hi there, this is Glenn from Viola's Auto and Home, and today I'm looking to buy an EV, but like computers, I've avoided purchasing an EV because they are constantly changing. What should I do? Is this the right time to buy an EV? Or would I be an early adopter of EV technology if I bought one today? Please let me know what you think. Provide some comments and guidance on what I should do. This is the first part of a three-part series on electric vehicles. I'm trying to give you a little bit of information that I found out about them, and hopefully you'll find this interesting and informative. Please check out parts 2 and 3 to complete the presentation. What should I buy? There's so much selection out there. As you see on the slide, there's 20 different vehicles presented: trucks, cars, SUVs, etc. Which one would you recommend? Mine's going to be a city commuter. I've got a truck. I've got a couple of cars. I've got a daily driver already that's gasoline car. So anyways, before I select one, I thought I should know something about EVs and how they operate. So I thought I'd get educated. And are EVs different from internal combustion vehicles? Yes or no? Well, only one way to find out is start digging into it. Let's find out. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of history of why the emphasis on EVs, or why the big push towards EVs. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I thought it was important so that we understand why we're being exposed to electric vehicles, plug-in electric vehicles. In 1992, an international treaty was signed with hopes to reverse the effects of climate change, that nasty word, climate change. This was amended in 1997 with something called the Kyoto Protocol. Some of you may have heard of it, some don't, haven't, which focused on greenhouse gas emissions and defined the main cause. And finally, the last phase, or the most recent, was the Paris Agreement, which was adopted in 2015. This was a global climate change initiative that was held near Paris, France. Hence the name Paris Agreement or Paris Accord. The goal is a movement towards zero emissions by middle of the 21st century. The map on this page is a reference from Berkeley Earth, which shows those countries that have signed and ratified the Paris Agreement as of February 2021. As you can see, most countries are recognizing the global initiative, and those that have signed it represent over 95% of the global emissions as of February 2021. Let me know your comments if you'd like to hear more about this subject and the global stance towards clean air. Again, I didn't want to spend much time on this. I wanted to talk about EVs, but this is why the push towards EVs. So according to announcements by some governments, the plan is to prevent new gasoline-powered light truck and car registrations after as late as 2035, as early as, depending on the jurisdiction, 2030, and I've heard rumors of even sooner than that. In general, this means that consumers who wish to register new gasoline-powered vehicles beginning in 2035 may not be able to do so. Now, there's some exceptions to that. Heavy trucks, airplanes, trains, etc., ships, they're not included in that list. Since gasoline-powered vehicle is driven on a range of about 12,000 miles average a year, vehicles last between 250,000 miles and 400,000 miles. And the proposed last year of new gasoline-powered vehicle registration is 2034. Then the grandfathering of gasoline-powered vehicles should last at least another 15 years, or until at least 2050. So those of you who have cars like what's pictured here in the slide might know that these are going to last or be grandfathered or be allowed on the streets till at least 2050. Some of us probably won't be around then, but anyways, these are some nice cars. What will happen then? What about the car hobbyist who owns one of these cars? What's going to happen? I myself own a couple of these cars, so I'm concerned about it. Incentives for various governments are changing all the time and are dependent upon where you live, rural or urban setting. So the governments have come across and they're providing incentives for people to buy or lease new electric vehicles or plug-in hybrids, as well as hydrogen fueled vehicles. The larger cities may have incentives as well for home-based chargers and other systems relating to the EVs. There may be tax incentives by various municipalities and governments for EVs. I've listed some of the source locations here on the slide, so you can check them out for your reference. Just put a hold on the slide, write it down, or remember it. It does go into some detail about what's available from the federal, state, or provincial levels. Some countries no longer provide tax incentives for certain models and brands, so some of the countries are limiting which models do have incentives. So in Canada, the Tesla Model 3 was officially exempt from tax benefits as of October 2021. And that's the federal incentives. There are still provincial incentives in Canada, and there may be state incentives in the United States. So if you go to a dealer looking for a new EV, don't really trust the fellow that's selling you the EV, that he's going to tell you the current up-to-date information. Go to these sites and do your own little research on your vehicle in particular. The sites will have up-to-date information from a state or provincial and a federal level. One other note is the U.S. President recently said that he expects at least 50% of the vehicles on the road by 2030 will be EVs. So obviously he's got some incentives or different legislation that he plans on putting through to reduce the number of gasoline-powered vehicles on the road. Now I'll just stop the government issues and work on the car itself, or the vehicles themselves, electric vehicles. What's the operating components? What makes the electric vehicle go and stop and run? Well, basically on the outside it looks pretty much the same as a gasoline vehicle. So this slide shows a transparent view, major parts of an EV. Hopefully this helps to visualize what's inside of an EV. The major driving component is basically under where the hood used to be in the gasoline powered motor. The battery lines the bottom of the car, And basically there's four wheels, and they function the same way as the old ones do. Most EVs have a what they call a direct current, or a DC, lithium-ion battery, some with and some without battery cooling. This is connected, the battery is connected to an inverter, which is there to convert AC, alternating current, to DC current. The motor is driven by AC current. So the motor is pretty much the same as a motor, or the drivetrain behind the motor is pretty much the same as gasoline powered motor, and they have a transmission and a driving gear and components to make the wheels go around. However, it's got a bunch of other components: electric traction motor, if we go through the diagram, controller and inverter, DC-DC converter, thermal system for cooling for those cars that have cooling. Some of the more commuter cars don't have cooling. I think the Nissan Leaf does not have cooling. I can't remember what the Volt has, but Tesla has cooling. The new Lucid Air has cooling. And Lucid Air has a different cooling system, although it's similar to Tesla, but different. They claim their technology is better, and that's why they're able to go with a higher voltage battery system. Anyways, the electric power control unit is the brains behind the EV, as it distributes the power and controls the charging system. Also, there is a 12-volt auxiliary battery system to power the accessories that have a battery and charging system as well. Some EVs can have more than one electric drive motor depending on their configuration. And I've seen them with 4 motors, one at each wheel. I've seen them with one, driving all 4, or driving the 2 fronts and the backs go along, just like a front-wheel drive car. Or I've seen them with the one in the front and one in the back, or driving each set of wheels. Thanks. I just want to thank the United States Department of Alternative Fuels Data Center for supplying the transparent picture of an EV. They're located at www.efdc.energy.gov. Check them out for more information about the EV components in a car. So what I want to do now is go through just some of the costs and some of the things that you might be curious about if you were to buy one or are buying one. In my case, I haven't bought one yet. Still plan to, but I wanted to know about these things. Again, this is part 1 of 3 parts. So this is the first part of the EV components in there, associated service and repairs. The first one is a comparison of the various costs, and this is very simple comparison where you've got an EV and gasoline. First 3 months, the EV costs are are higher than a gasoline car. After a year, they're still higher, and these are service or repair costs. And after 3 years, the gasoline-powered car starts to cost more than the electric car. What I wanted you to do is take away the long-run service repair costs increase at a higher rate for gasoline vehicles than EVs. And I think that's really, don't focus on the numbers, focus on the trend. However, you need to know that as you get closer to the 10-year mark, the gasoline vehicles go down in value relative to the EVs. And the EVs actually get closer and closer to their economic life. The battery life expectancy is around 10 years from all the research that I've done. There's another problem that might occur is living outside of service center areas. You might be in a rural community. So if, for example, you bought an electric car and it breaks down in your rural community and there isn't a mechanic to work on it, you need to hire somebody who drives out and works on your new electric vehicle or potentially new electric vehicle, whether it be a warranty or otherwise. Some of the new vehicle manufacturers charge as much as $1,500 US for a service call for warranty or otherwise. And even if it's warranty, you still have to pay the service call. A service call may not be covered under warranty, which is surprising. Again, the battery on an EV lasts around 10 years, and companies are offering remanufactured batteries at about half the cost of the original manufacturer battery. But like most service costs, it's not the parts that are expensive, it's the labor costs on your repair bill that's expensive. Recent blog sites that I've researched have indicated that the OEM battery replacement of an EV could cost as much as around $20,000 US or higher. So if we look down here, these are some of the costs that I've researched. The Chevrolet Bolt around 14.5 Canadian, so that'll be around 10.5 US. The Jaguar I-Pace, they're one of the more expensive at 50 grand Canadian, or about 37.5 US. Lucid Air, well, it's unknown. Their battery technology is again unknown. My guess is it's going to be more expensive. It'll be probably up at the I-Pace level, at least for the first few years. Nissan Leaf around 10 grand. And the Tesla Model S around 30 grand. So by the time your Tesla Model S is 10 years old, it depreciates to around $30,000, and that's kind of its economic life. So it's not worth much at that point. So you can see where the value or the use value goes suddenly to very, very small number. I've also included some of the warranty items, and this is the battery warranty life in years and kilometers. And what's interesting to note is the battery warranty is required to be 8 years long, and it's mandated by the government to be that long. I'll show you some numbers here in a future slide that I think make a lot of sense anyways. There's also in the warranty the only way that these manufacturers, Jaguar and Lucid, are going to replace the battery is if the battery capacity falls to 70% of its new capacity. So and then these are stated numbers and they're subjective, and hey, what can I say? So one of the areas that I looked into was road tax, or the cost to register your vehicle. So some of the jurisdictions have separate number plates for EVs or hydrogen fueled vehicles. An example is in the UK. These are UK number plates shown here. There's 3 different versions of, and they show the green, which is an EV plate. The other is Canada. I don't have an example, but they show EV on the side of the license plate in one of the provinces. In Quebec, they do. I don't know about the others, but those are the areas that I found. In Canada, customized plates are available, and they may be available in the US as well, which an owner can buy a customized plate so he could put his own version of EV on that. Since most jurisdictions and governments use gasoline as another form of road taxes, the registration of EVs will need to rise to compensate municipalities and governments with lost revenues due to the loss of use of gasoline. This may not only come in the form of increased registration costs, but may increase the cost of power. Also, EV insurance, according to myev.com, the average cost to insure an electric vehicle is about 21% higher than the equivalent gasoline-powered vehicle. This rate difference is mainly due to the high cost of repair when an EV is in an accident. Also, there's a higher threshold to write off an EV due to the battery replacement cost if it is damaged in an accident. Thanks to Car Magazine for their picture of a UK number plate showing the distinction of an EV. Check them out again. Check them out at Car Magazine, all one word, .co.uk. The best, the other item I wanted to focus on is recalls. What I find is that whenever a new car manufacturer or new cars hit the road, there's always a series of recalls as they test them out on the roads. And the best source I've found for recalls in Canada is from the government, as they regulate safety of motor vehicles. So the Canadian reference is showing on this side, as well as the United States reference. And I don't just stop when I look at recalls in Canada. The United States has anywhere from 10 to 20 times more sales of motor vehicles, and if there's going to be a problem of a vehicle, most likely it'll show up in the United States first. So I always look to the United States as my bellwether, and Canada, because I live in Canada, as my secondary source for recalls. So it's a good idea to check both if you're looking. I just wanted to give you an example. In 2021, the 2021 Chevy Bolt had a recent recall of their vehicles in the United States and Canada, as the battery may fail, causing a fire. And some of the batteries have failed, and you've seen them in the media. They've ended up in a fire or even an explosion, which isn't very nice. Anyways, General Motors rolled out a campaign to replace all the batteries in the cars, starting with the first models produced, working forward until the most recent ones for 2022 model year. Some dealerships have suspended the sales of the Bolt EV, and they are being repaired. Check the manufacturer and the model for recalls before considering the EV of choice. So here's something interesting. This is the various warranty, basic warranty items. I haven't gone into much detail here as to what's covered under basic. Every car manufacturer has something a little different. But generally speaking, the powertrain, the battery, roadside assistance, corrosion, gives you an idea of the comparison between various manufacturers. You know, pick out your brand that you want to buy, and you can look into it. This is just a guidance again. The EV technology is dynamic, and it changes all the time. So the information was obtained from the manufacturer's website, and due to transposition there may be some errors or emissions. But again, it's just to give you an idea. Look down the list and look at the battery warranties. As I was saying earlier, battery warranties are mandated. In this case, it shows miles, so 8 years or 100,000 miles, 160,000 kilometers in Canada. Many manufacturers have exclusions on their warranties, such as the battery warranty, where the manufacturer will replace the battery if the capacity falls below a certain level, such as in some cases 70, some cases 60, depending on the manufacturer. And again, you're dealing with a bunch of different numbers. What was the battery capable of when it left the factory, and how is the 60 or 70% determined? Some of them are doing this right now, but I believe that most of the manufacturers are going to go in that direction. As you see warranties of EVs, as EVs become more popular. Sorry for the phone call. Batteries are rated by the number of kilowatt hours of energy they have stored in them. The higher the storage capacity, the longer the time between charging intervals, and the higher the amount of power that is available to the electric motors. An electric car consumes an average of 1 kilowatt hour of energy to travel 3 to 4 miles or travel 4.5 to 6.5 kilometers, depending on several factors relating to the battery, use of the EV, and efficiency of the drivetrain. Battery capacity converted to distance is not the length you can safely drive with an EV. Typically, EVs should be used between 10% and 80% of the maximum battery capacity. So using a new battery or EV that has an advertised range of, for example, 120 miles, 200 kilometers, will have a comfortable range between 12 miles and 100 miles. So when it gets down to 12 miles, you should probably charge it, and you shouldn't overcharge it beyond 100 miles. And we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, which is 20 kilometers and 160 kilometers for this example. Or the duration is about 85 miles or 140 kilometers. In a normal running situation, the range will be less than that, not considering the reserve capacity of the battery if one is available. If manufacturers offer long-range battery life, if you can afford it, I would recommend selecting that option. I certainly will get a longer life battery if I buy a new one, and will be shopping for a long life battery in a 1 to 2 year old used one. Again, I haven't decided yet which one, but I'm out looking. Now, if you're like me and you suffer from range anxiety, which I do fill up my gasoline vehicles at 1/4 of a tank. I like to have the more reserve I can. My recommendation is to take care of the battery in your vehicle, the EV, as the lifeblood. It's expensive to fix and can dramatically affect the value of your vehicle. Typically, the battery represents between 20 and 30% of the new vehicle price. Since the current lithium-ion battery lasts between 300 and 2,000 cycles, the life of your battery is less the smaller the capacity or range. Replacement is very expensive, as I've said, for a new one, and they tend to last on average between 8 and 10 years. An example below in the graph is a Tesla battery life in number of cycles. So if you are charging once per week, on average your battery will have about still have about 95% of its stated capacity after 1,000 weeks. So just check out the slide and look at the numbers. Hope you find it informative. Again, this is I've given you a reference of where this information can be found. I find this fascinating. Charging using a DC fast charger, supercharger, which is a Tesla DC fast charger, or any other fast charging system will reduce the life of your battery in the long run. Use healthy charging habits to elongate the life of your battery by charging your battery as slow as conveniently possible. Plug it in, leave it over the weekend, ideally, but everybody's in a hurry nowadays. Charging stations may have one inlet source of power that is set at a certain level of charging for all outlets or charging stations to share. Let me explain. If you expect to go, for example, to a DC fast charging station that has 4 outlets, and the station advertises their fast charging capacity at 100 kilowatts per hour, you may be able to charge at 100 kilowatt per hour if you are the only EV charging, but may end up, if the bank of chargers is full, i.e. there's 4 vehicles charging at the same time, you may end up with 25 megawatt hours of charging capacity. These charging stations, these independent charging stations, also tend to have charging rates on a per hour basis. So if you're being diluted by the other guy, the charging time takes a lot longer. Makes sense. They get paid by the hour for access to charging your battery. Payment for charging at an EV station may be limited by the credit card you hold, as the plug point power provider may want their own credit card to pay for charging. So load up your iPhone wallet or your Android wallet before you go. Make sure if you are planning a trip, know what stations you're going to use. Now, we're going to talk about doing road trips and those sort of things in another slide, so I'll reserve that for another slide. It's actually in another part to this presentation. It appears that parties that own the land or the parking lot or facility where the charging station is located can set the rules for the charging station. And the rules include which charging station is active. So there may be a bank of 10 charging stations, but only 5 active. It may be checkerboarded. There could be 5 on one side and active and 5 not active. So the time that the charging stations are active, they may only be active from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And how much capacity of the charge will be available at the station. So it may have a stated capacity, but the capacity at a single station may be a lot lower than what the stated capacity is. You'll never find it higher. These companies may vary the rate of power available at the charge point as well, regardless of the capacity of the charge point. They are also the ones that set the rate. Charge point or charge point owners can charge in dollars per kilowatt hour or dollars per hour, and the same supplier of power may have different rates and terms at various charging stations in your area. Even if you check the app on your phone for an available station or reserve a charge station, that still doesn't ensure that you will get to the charging station and it works. Current lithium-ion batteries permanently lose on average of 0.5 to 2% of their charging capacity each year due to time aging. Battery age, that's the battery age from initial use. So as you leave a battery, well, you've seen it on your phone. If you leave your phone for a certain period of time, it just goes dead. So that's time aging of the battery. That's a type of time aging of the battery. The battery charge goes down. But time aging is capacity of the battery. The cyclical use of the battery, the number of charging cycles, also reduces the battery life. This cannot be avoided. So as a battery ages and it is charged up, its ability to charge to original design capacity is reduced. In 8 years, you can expect on average only 80 to 90% of your capacity you have had during your first year of operation under normal use. However, battery life is getting better, and data from users of the Tesla brand, as shown in this slide, have degraded in the range of 10 to 20% after 200,000 miles driven, which is about 320,000 kilometers driven. And this time period's 8 years. So it gives you an idea, this slide, of the life of your battery. So do you care that the battery's life is only 10 years if you've already had plenty of use out of the vehicle? Well, some people are driving their vehicles to 400,000 miles, 500,000 miles, and may drive them even longer. So this concludes the first part of a 3-part series. Check out parts 2 and 3 to get the full content of this presentation. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and provide your comments on the channel. If you have any ideas for our projects, please let me know, and we'll add them to the channel list. This is Glenn from Viola's Auto and Home. Bye for now.